Good afternoon and welcome to this month's show. I'm Luke McCormack. During today's show, we will discuss best practices with machine learning and artificial intelligence strategies in the federal government. With me on today's show are Gregory Allen, Director of Strategy and Policy at Department of Defense Joint Artificial Intelligence Center, Sanjay Kunyani, Chief Technology Officer, Department of Labor, Brett Vaughn, Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer, Department of Navy, Erica Thomas, DoD Comptroller, Intelligent Automation Program Manager, Office of the Secretary of Defense, Jim Richburg, Field Chief Information Security Officer for Public Sector at Fortinet, Henry Sowell, CIO Cloudera Government Solutions, and Bob Osborne, Chief Technology Officer, Global Government at ServiceNow. Well, AI certainly in artificial intelligence and RPA, a very important subject. I couldn't think of a better person to start us off. Greg, tell us about the state of the state. What's happening over in the JAIC?
Thanks for the opportunity to be with you here today. I think over the past 2 years, you've seen a real change in the mindset of the Department of Defense with respect to artificial intelligence. The types of arguments that I used to have a couple of years ago was about whether or not artificial intelligence was important and whether or not now was the right time for the department to be accelerating the adoption of artificial intelligence. That discussion is essentially over. The leadership of the department, by and large, gets it, and that's true at each of the services. That's true in the combatant commands. That's true in the Office of the Secretary of Defense. And it's just one illustration of the prioritization that the department has put on artificial intelligence. My own organization, the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center, was elevated to be a direct report to the Deputy Secretary of Defense. So the number 2 person for the entire 3 million plus person Department of Defense. And as we've seen a recognition of the importance of artificial intelligence, we're also moving from one-off types of projects to sort of demonstrate and illustrate the capabilities of artificial intelligence towards thinking about what are the technical barriers that make adopting artificial intelligence difficult? And how do we make those barriers reduced so that more folks can actually implement AI capabilities with less effort and less cost? In the case of the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center, we're intimately involved in many of these efforts, but I want to emphasize that there's good work being done across the entire Department of Defense. So I'll talk about 2 specific things that we're doing to sort of reduce the technical barriers and accelerate AI. The first is the Accelerating Data and AI Initiative, or ADA. Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks announced this effort in June 2021, and it is a really exciting opportunity for the entire Department of Defense. Essentially, what we're recognizing is that at the same time we're developing more AI-enabled capabilities in our research institutions and in our program offices, we also need to be modifying the infrastructure and approaches at the combatant commands so that these capabilities can more quickly and effectively be integrated. And also so that we can have the capabilities to ensure that different data sets coming off the real diversity of technological systems that exist in the combatant command can effectively share data and make that available for machine learning algorithms, which improve their performance as they're exposed to more and better quality and more diverse data sets. So ADA is a really exciting initiative that the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center is leading, but is really involving the activities of so many different organizations across the department, including the CIO, the CDO, and the combatant commands themselves. So that's one thing that we're up to. The second thing I'd like to highlight is the Joint Common Foundation. And this is a recognition that cloud-first software systems really need to be born in a cloud-enabled environment that enables what we call the DevSecOps approach. And for folks who don't know, there's a different mindset when you're working with cloud-first software that is delivered as a service than traditional software systems in the Department of Defense, which you might burn onto a CD-ROM, install once, and then forget about for the next 5 years. The good news is that that mindset is really being erased across the department. And so the Joint Common Foundation is a software development environment that includes not only sort of all the best practices tooling that software developers have come to expect in commercial industry, but also some of the secret sauce capabilities that AI and machine learning software in particular needs. And this is an environment that we've been working on with partners across the department for over a year now. And I'm delighted to note that we hit initial operating capability at the beginning of this year. And we've now onboarded programs from each of the armed services. And folks are actually finding that developing AI capabilities, when you do it in the Joint Common Foundation, you have a faster and more effective path to getting capabilities into the hands of your end users and then iteratively updating those systems.
Really
so that's
fantastic.
Just a sample of what's going on at the department.
Right, really fantastic to see the Jake sort of grow from these proof of concept sort of one-offs as you described to these industrial strength type capabilities, really laying the foundation down for lots of great activity to happen going forward. Sanjay, how about at Department of Labor? As I understand it, you guys got some really cool stuff going on over there. Tell us about the state of the state at labor.
Great, thank you, Luke. So I want to build up where Greg started with what's happening in defense, because we're at a bit more of a foundational level. And so I wanted to start by emphasizing that at DOL, we value emerging technologies. We're starting to make some really good headway there. But the focus is on how do we provide new opportunities to advance the mission and not just do cool things for cool's sake. That's been a really important area of focus we have. It's how do you enable the mission? How are we improving the work that we're doing? Is it now a fully shared services environment for IT? Mm-hmm. At the same time, how are we thinking about the balance of how cost factors into that? So to make it a reality, there's really three foundational areas that we've been focused on. One is we've created a new CTO branch on emerging technologies. And the focus is on how do we identify, pilot, and advance emerging tech within a cabinet level agency. And this includes hiring staff that can really support, talk about, and champion the work. That's really key. We're also building an enterprise architecture and IT governance process to support the use of emerging tech. And this includes, as part of that, not just the infrastructure, but also what's the model we're using to incubate and test these new technologies that are coming in. And how does that include discovery, prioritization, doing good proof of concepts and piloting? And then a really important focus is also how do you fund? What's the funding model for that as we think about how we scale emerging tech within the department? And then most recently, we've established an enterprise-wide RPA capability for automation. So we want to be a leader in this area. And so to date, we've got 4 RPA bots that we've deployed around purchasing, acquisitions, market research, and other early tasks. We have one on data cleansing for an HR performance review that's going on. And then we have several more in the pipeline. But again, these are all very foundational starts to really get the agency to buy into the concept, see the value, and for us to make sure that the cost and the benefits are mapping out. In other cases, if it's not a good approach, we'll chalk that up to
test and evaluate, right?
Test, evaluate, fail fast, but give people the ability to experiment in a safe environment. So that's been really good. Just a couple of things that we're seeing as to how this is functioning. One is the need for education. Technology part's a lot easier than getting people to understand the value and the impact. Mm-hmm. Have discussions around costs, a responsible use of things like AI. And so that active education component, the culture change, has been really crucial to get people to want to adopt, buy in, and actually make things happen. The other is just the emphasis on the need for strong data. So we've got 2 parallel efforts. One is not just how are we doing emerging tech, but how do we make sure that we've got the data infrastructure in place so that we can fully leverage the value of AI and ML, because without those 2 things happening in combination, you really can't leverage quickly the value in that area. So again, a lot of foundational first happening here, but we're creating a strong infrastructure so that DOL can really take a lead role in this area.
Have to have that superstructure in place. You've pointed it out. Greg certainly has pointed that out. Brett, how about over at Department of Navy? I know you all have a lot of activity going on over there. Obviously, you're probably coordinating with the Jake. There's a lot of AI and ML and RPA type stuff going on in the Navy.
Yeah, absolutely, Luke. And you're absolutely right. So almost every day I work with the Jake, and over the last year or so, I've been amazed at how much AI we're actually doing cross service. And just only recently we developed the ability to actually discern that, right? Do an inventory and view what's going on. And it's not easy because over the last couple of decades, the technology and the terms have changed. The lexicon, the language has changed. So it's a challenge to keep up. But you know, in the Navy, I like to start out, you know, talks like these on explaining why AI is important to us. You know, if you look at strategic guidance from the president, from Congress, from our chief of naval operations, and you were to collect all the references to AI, implicit or explicit, you would find a capability target or a picture painted that for me is exponential. It's on an exponential curve. And it's significantly dependent on emerging technologies like AI. AI is not the only one. Nanotech, robotics, additive manufacturing, 5G, all in that family, right? And they're all digital and information based, heavily dependent on an underpinning of a tight and solid digital fabric. So my challenge is we're a 245-year-old organization. We weren't born digital. So we're in the middle of what I call a phase shift to become more digital, to lay the keel, that foundation you were talking about, because that is absolutely necessary if your aim is to scale technologies like AI. So that's top of mind for me. The next piece that I like to talk about is what we mean by AI when we say it. In the Navy, we recognize AI as a constellation of technologies across 5 bands. They include robotic process automation, intelligent automation, cognitive analytics, narrow AI, and even general AI. If you were to look at a single instance of AI, the key mental model that we employ is called the AI stack. And essentially what that is we always start with a problem first. We don't start with AI because AI is not this, it's not going to be a solution in every case. So break a problem down. And if AI could be the solution, we work through the stack, which means it's not just software, it's data, it's transport, it's compute, it's models, it's algorithms, and several other components that have to be composed, held, kept coherent, secured, tested and evaluated, and sustained along a consistent continuum. So that idea or notion of the stack is very important to us. And it's not just the technology. I think Sanjay said it. It's especially for me, when I look at the challenge of moving a 245-year-old organization like the Navy, steeped in culture, from its industrial roots, you know, to a more digital mindset. The challenges are technologic and they're cultural or practice or process oriented, and it's the latter that really, for me, present the most work and the most challenge. The technology is straightforward in many cases, but changing the culture and the way we think and act to do AI right is one of the biggest challenges for us. And just again, you know, problem first. We always start with, you know, looking at a challenge or a problem and even, you know, I call it the AI calculus of determining whether or not AI is even the right hammer for your given nail, right? Recently, you know, we're doing a lot, as I said initially, and I think folks would be amazed how much activity is going on. Just recently, our MQ-25 Stingray, which is the first unmanned vehicle to operate off an aircraft carrier, just successfully refueled an E-2 Hawkeye and an F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. That's happened in the last couple months. And also on September 9th, the Navy commissioned Task Force 59, which is the unmanned and AI task force for the Fifth Fleet in the Gulf. So there's a lot more going on. Those are just a couple examples of where we're headed. And
Sure.
just to cap it off, it's, if you crack open the Navy and look at, our application, a development application of AI, it's really gonna end up serving two ends. It's either gonna fuel some level of autonomy in an unmanned system, or it's gonna fuel or propel some type of decision aid. And that decision aid could be on the bridge of a ship in the middle of the ocean, or it could be back in the Pentagon. And the challenge of managing that continuum of keeping the stack solvent from, the Pentagon to the middle of the Pacific is one of the unique challenges we have as a military department.
Sure,
So,
a lot of inertia when you're rolling down the sea with an aircraft carrier. It's not a cigarette boat. You can't turn around on a dime. Erica, how about over? I love the intelligent in the title here. I know you all have a lot of activity going on over there at Department of Defense, Secretary of Defense. Tell us about what's happening over in the Comptroller's office.
Thanks, Luke. Yeah, so in Comptroller, we started what I would call an RPA program 3 years ago or so. And it's kind of morphed into now we call it intelligent automation. So we started with, okay, let's look at RPA. What's the opportunity space within our financial management programs? How can we improve our processes? And it quickly morphed beyond that. So it quickly built into not only could we identify opportunity space within our financial management processes, but could we also build a shared service, a platform that could help promulgate this technology across the department. So what we quickly did right out of the gate is we were partnering with other organizations inside of DoD. Army, for example, was one of our initial partners. And we stood up RPA infrastructure on our shared service platform. It's all hosted under Advana, which is DoD's advanced data analytic platform. That's where our RPA infrastructure resides. And we have basically stood up a shared service that any groups in DoD that are interested in moving out and starting to use technology like RPA can come and connect to the platform. It makes it a lot easier. It removes maybe not all of the barriers and some of the challenges that groups are facing, but it removes many of them. So they can start their programs and or mature and have better management and oversight of their programs. I think as of today, we have 25 different tenants on the platform across DoD, leveraging the RPA shared service platform. So that's been a really good success story. And we're planning to expand that. We have more than one RPA vendor offering on that platform. So it's actually been a really good growth opportunity, and we really haven't had to advertise that much. People have just naturally came and they've heard about it. And I think there's just really good value to the department there. That said, we started with RPA. And we all know, there are limitations to what RPA can do. It's for those standard repetitive tasks. We saw that right out of the gate as groups were submitting ideas for potential automation, ideas using RPA. They're not all good. They're not all going to be solved with RPA. A lot of them require additional technologies, potentially machine learning, AI, and things like that. So what we've done, and recently we partnered with the JAIC to do some prototypes of how can we weave in machine learning in conjunction with RPA. So how do we kind of build that continuum to develop more advanced automation solutions that go beyond just RPA technology. And I think that's going to be very exciting in the department. I know a lot of other groups have started with RPA, and just like we did, there are ideas that are getting submitted that go beyond RPA. They need machine learning, they need AI. So I think we're going to see a lot of movement in the department. And that's something that I'm excited about, and selfishly, I'm excited about for my own team as well.
Sure. And it sounds like you're really laying a lot of groundwork down there and discovering, rolling up the value chain up the stack there. Exciting time. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network.